It's not only environmental, and as a result, they benefit from perhaps better liquidity, lower yields, which will translate into lower all-in costs, accessing pockets that otherwise wouldn't be available for them, so alternative funds, and as a result, they can continue doing their business, with better means.
I'll talk now to Jonatas Couri, his partner at Ecoagro, about green bonds. What is the concept of a green bond?
A green bond is no different than any other bond. It's just the utilization of proceeds, which is mostly applied against environmental, social, or governance projects, and as a result have a better impact to our climate, and hence they carry this green bond certification.
How does it work?
A green bond is no different than any other bond. A company which is in demand of capital contacts a bank, a partnering bank, and proceeds with structuring, issuance, and allocation of investments through the capital market, just like any other regular bond. It's still somehow controlled, utilizing all the policies that we have seen in the major developed economies. In the US, you have the Securities and Exchange Commission, which will dictate rules. In the UK, you have a different commission. In Brazil, we have CVM. So it's regular financial markets issuance. The difference is that it has to be accompanied by a professional opinion of how this is really impacting the environment. So, for instance, you have professionals, consultancies, specialty firms in the US, in Europe, that will apply some rules, will apply some calculations against those projects, and we'll find out whether this is really creating savings in terms of greenhouse emissions, whether this is having an impact in terms of deforestation, into the non-utilization of fossil fuels. These are very complex calculations. These are methods that this specialty group, specialty consultants must, test and ensure this is really green and stamp it before we go out in the market and say, look, this is not just a regular bond, as we said. It's accompanied with this certification that ensures this is an environmental impact project.
How are emissions here in Brazil? Does it need an intermediary, like banks?
You do need that. In Brazil, for you to allocate a bond or a debenture or a securitization paper with a green certification, just like any other capital markets issuance, you need to have a broker placing those orders, registering against the investors their interest, being custodians of those papers. So a company can, in fact, create their own project that will require financing and will be accompanied by this professional opinion, but they will need a bank. They will need the bank to help structure it. They will need the bank to help registering with the Security Commission, and they need a broker to be able to distribute against investors willing to accommodate those alternative investments.
Jonatas, which kind of agribusiness industries can benefit from green bonds?
Agriculture businesses are capital intensive, so they always require bond issuance, debentures, securitizations to continue their business. The difference is that nowadays there's a number of firms, for instance, commodity trading firms, pulp and paper, sugar and ethanol industries, that their methods, their industries are quite advanced in terms of not utilizing forests that are not being planted with the best standards, making sure that waste is properly disposed, making sure that their products reflect the best social governance that one can expect. Now, these companies, they are having an impact in terms of environmental, social, and governance. It's not only environmental, and as a result, they benefit from perhaps better liquidity, lower yields, which will translate into lower all-in costs, accessing pockets that otherwise wouldn't be available for them, so alternative funds, and as a result, they can continue doing their business, like with better means, could be, different sources of liquidity, could be with a better appreciation of their brand. So it is a win-win situation for the agribusiness in Brazil to tap the green bonds market.
And Brazilian regulation for this market, is it different from abroad?
No, we are using global standards. There is a non-governmental organization in London called Climate Bonds Initiative. They are distributing in Brazil the best practices that have been approved globally. They are partnering with our Federation of Local Banks. They're partnering with the securitization firms like Ecoagro, law firms, to ensure that the standards that it's being utilized in the most sophisticated markets, being that the US, the UK, Europe, Asia, can be applied here. As a result, you can reach any pocket that is out there utilizing the same sort of communication, the same measurements. There are other firms that are looking closely into this. Our local exchange commission, they're concerned with issuance in the capital market as a role. They want to dictate rules, they want to control it, make sure it's in the best interest of regular investors. But they also realize that some assets are intangible, all right, and they have value, and as a result, they're open for more creativity. Okay, and so we don't have stricter regulation versus US or Europe or Asia. We have similar ones. We are just opening up to talks, to chats with these regulators about how creative we can be with the existing rules and regulations.
Can you give us some examples of companies here?
In Brazil, we have two agribusiness firms that have both issued green bonds, one locally, one abroad. We are not restricted only to agribusiness firms in terms of green bond issuances. It is a coincidence both of them participated, which is BRF, our leading poultry company, and also Suzano, which is one of our leading pulp and paper exporters. Both of them have accompanied their issuances an offshore bond denominated in dollar and a local denominated BRL securitization, both accompanied by expert opinions into the utilization of proceeds. And as a result, they got certified green. One of these issuances have been awarded a certificate from the Climate Bonds Initiative for being the country pioneer, which is Suzano. We were happy to accompany them structuring and issuing this paper recently.
And how can we compare our green bond market to other markets in the world?
In Brazil, we are at an infant stage, very infant stage. The CBI, the Climate Bond Initiative, they are putting together calculations about issuances on a daily basis globally. So historically, we had a lot of issuances from the US. Now this shift is, this pattern is shifting towards Asia. We have a number of issuances in China and Australasia as well. In Brazil, very infant stage, but huge potential, especially because agribusiness is one of our most sophisticated and a major sector and a major component to our gross domestic product. So although it's at an infant stage versus more developed economies, we see great potential, and investors are seeing the same, this potential that we're showing in terms of agriculture, better methods for you to carry out, harvesting, planting, and the environmental impact.
Which are the stronger green bonds market in the world?
I think these days is China, followed by the US, but you also have some countries issuing this as well. You have sovereign issuances in Europe. We have seen recently Poland, France, and now appears Africa is coming up as well. We have heard something about Nigeria, and all this is helping towards a global market. It's not, we don't have a central market in the U.S. or central market in China. No, you have leading issuing regions, but this is spreading all around the globe. As a matter of fact, we are very excited to see there is a link being built between the agriculture supply chain now and the capital markets. These two, they don't often talk to each other because agriculture, which is the sector which we see better incentives for environmental impact, they have a number of nuances, a number of flexibilities that the capital markets are not used to. All right. Now, with this specialty bonds, which are not, no different than any other bond, but a bit more, customized, they are trying to adapt. They are making sure that this link between the agriculture supply chain and the capital markets, they are talking more regularly.
Can you tell us about your experience dealing with green bonds here at Ecoagro?
We have issued the first one in Brazil. It's not a plain bond, it's a securitization issuance, which is not very different than a fixed income paper that you see on a bond market. It has been issued for the first time, and as a result, we participated for the first time and received this award for Country Pioneer. But our experience dealing with certified financing, it's a bit more widespread. We have been financing through securitization and through our asset management business. Agricultural firms that are very known to achieve global agriculture certifications. I mentioned Bonsucro for sugar and ethanol, mentioned Roundtable for sustainable soybean for soy. You have Better Cotton Initiative, BCI. We have financed these crops in Brazil for many years, and now, this is all turning to our advantage because we were doing this for the sake of our own policies of being, socially responsible, and the market is recognizing this now. So what we were doing internally now has become an expertise valued outside.
Jonatas, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate that. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Luciane Miranda to Dukascopy TV.